In the kingdom of Eirilon, surrounded by towering mountains and dense forests, Julia lived her simple life in a small village called Éldor. She was loved by everyone, known for her humility and constant desire to help others. She didn't care about appearances or wealth. She would walk through the market, smiling at everyone, wearing a simple white linen dress and tying her long hair with silk threads gifted to her by an old poor woman she often helped. Meanwhile, the royal family resided in a towering palace at the center of the capital, where Prince Edward lived in isolation from the outside world. Handsome and cold-hearted, he gazed at everyone with an indifferent look. His father, the king, watched the situation, trying to restore life to the kingdom through a surprising move. One day, a royal messenger dressed in lavish clothing arrived at Julia's house, carrying a royal decree. The king had chosen her to marry Prince Edward. The news was shocking to her and her village. How could a simple girl like her become the princess of the kingdom? Standing with her parents in their humble home, Julia held the royal letter with trembling hands and said in a voice filled with confusion, "But I'm not a princess. I know nothing about palace life." Her father smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Julia, your kind heart is what makes you fit for this role. Don't be afraid." The next day, Julia left the village, heading to the royal palace. Julia arrived at the royal palace, surrounded by protocols and formalities she wasn't used to. The palace was grand and luxurious, but cold and rigid. Dark colors dominated the walls, and marble pillars stood like towering ghosts. When she took her first steps into the grand hall, she felt as though the air weighed heavily on her chest. She was greeted by the queen, but it was a stiff greeting with few words exchanged. Then, Julia met Prince Edward, who awaited her in his luxurious office. Edward, in a cold tone, "You're Julia?" Julia, with a shy smile, "Yes, my lord." Edward looked at her for a long moment without showing any interest. "I hope you get accustomed to life here quickly." At that moment, Julia felt her heart sink a little. The prince was not as she had imagined. He was colder than ice, and the palace was full of darkness and isolation. She felt more like a stranger than ever before. Days passed, and Julia tried her best to fit in a palace life. She would go out to the palace gardens to breathe fresh air and spend her time visiting nearby villages and helping the poor. Though she deeply missed having someone to share her thoughts and feelings with. While she laughed with the people outside, she would return to her palace feeling lonely, with no one to share her life. One day, while sitting alone in the royal garden, admiring the flowers and wondering about her new life, Julia noticed someone watching her from afar. It was a tall man in iron armor, his sharp eyes observing her from a distance. Thomas, the commander of the army, was the man who caught Julia's attention. He wasn't known for talking much, always quiet and reserved. His bravery and wisdom in battle earned him the respect of everyone. He approached her slowly and spoke in a deep, calm voice. "My lady, do you need anything?" Julia smiled, feeling comforted by someone speaking to her with sincerity. "I'm fine, just feeling a bit lonely here."